Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The world buzzed with tension, a hum that stretched across cities, towns, and continents. All eyes turned skyward as an ominous message crackled through the global emergency channel. A colossal surge of energy was approaching Earth, faster than light, faster than reason. No one knew what it was. Scientists were baffled. Politicians were terrified, and civilians, left in the dark, could only feel the creeping dread. Tony Stark sat in his sleek lab, surrounded by holographic screens projecting streams of data. Every calculation, every sensor readout pointed to the same grim conclusion. The energy signature was unlike anything ever recorded, dwarfing even the most dangerous extraterrestrial threats Earth had faced. And there at the core of the incoming storm was a figure of the destroyer, XRL. Stark sat, fingers drummed against the armrest of his chair, his mind racing. This isn't just another invasion, he muttered to himself. This is extinction level. The door slid open, and a holographic display of Jarvis flickered to life beside him. Sir, all global governments have initiated emergency protocols. The United Nations is requesting immediate aid and... I know, interrupted, his voice low, his gaze hardened as he flicked away one of the holographic screens with a swipe. None of them are prepared for this. Hell, I'm not even sure I am. But there was no time to doubt, no room for hesitation. Earth had faced countless threats, from alien invasions to interdimensional terrors, but this was something else. Tony stood striding to the center of his workshop where a newly constructed suit of armor hovered in its containment field. This wasn't like his usual Iron Man suits. This one was different. Larger, more complex, and built with materials and technology even his genius hadn't fully mastered. Antimatter. It was dangerous, volatile, and incredibly powerful, just the kind of edge they'd earn. Tony reached out, his fingers tracing the contours of the armor. If this doesn't work, he whispered, we rescrew. As the hum of the machinery filled the room, Tony activated the communication channel he had been avoiding for days, the one that connected him to Superman. Across the globe, in the heart of Metropolis, Clark Kent stood on the rooftop of the Daily Planet, his cape billowing in the wind. His super hearing had picked up the transmissions long before they reached the ears of the general public. The surge of energy hurtling toward Earth, the fear in the voices of the scientists who had no answers. It was all too familiar. He had faced threats before, cosmic forces, beings of unimaginable power, but this felt different. He could sense it. Then the call came through. Stark, Clark greeted, his voice steady, though a hint of weariness slipped through. Superman, Tony's voice crackled over the comms. I assume you've even heard the news. I have. Clark turned his gaze toward the horizon, his enhanced vision, cutting through the layers of atmosphere, locking onto the distant disturbance far beyond Earth. S-orbit. I've been monitoring it for the last few hours. It's sent a powerful... Tony's voice was tense, more than Clark had ever heard it before. Powerful doesn't begin to describe it. Thing Exarith is on a different level. We talking the ability to rip planets apart. I've been running simulations, and if we don't stop him before he reaches Earth, well, let's just say there's one TB in Earth left to say. Clark, as jaw tightened, I will do whatever it takes. We stop him together. There's a pause on the other end. You say that, but you and I, we've all got different methods. You rely on hope, on brute force this time. Hope might not cut it. Clark says, bow furrowed. And what is your solution? Blow him up. Risk everything in some high-stakes gamble. Tony's sigh was heavy with frustration. I've been working on something in antimatter suit. It's risky, but it might just be our best shot. We hit Exarith hard and fast before he has a chance to unleash whatever destruction he's planning. And what happens if your suit fails? What happens if it destabilizes? Clark asked, his voice growing sharper. You were putting too much faith in tech, Tony. This is about more than just strategy. That's where you come in, Tony replied. We combine our efforts, your power, my tech together. We might stand a chance. Clark hesitated. He didn't like the sound of it, the risk, the potential fallout. But time was running out, and he knew that Tony was right. They couldn't truly afford to fight separately, not this time. Already said it last I am. Good. Meet me at the rendezvous point, and I'll make our stand there. The world waited in breathless anticipation as news of the approaching threat spread like wildfire. Social media lit up with theories, rumors, and pleas for help. Across every nation, evacuation efforts began in earnest, though everyone knew deep down that running wouldn't save them. Clark flew across the sky, his red cape a streak of color against the fading light. He touched down near the devastated ruins of an old battleground, a place that had seen its share of conflicts, now just a wasteland chosen for its isolation. Tony was already there, his suit gleaming in the twilight. "Nice to see you in person," Tony quipped, though his usual sarcasm lacked its usual bite. Clark landed lightly beside him. "I hope you know what you were doing." Tony gave a slight nod. "I've run the numbers, and it should work. But let's just say if this doesn't go according to plan, we're going to have one hell of a problem on our hand." Clark scanned the horizon. "How much time do we have?" "Not much." Tony turned, his face serious. "Exaroth is almost here." And as if on cue, the sky darkened. The air crackled with energy, and a massive shockwave rippled through the atmosphere, sending debris flying. Exaroth had arrived. Exaroth was unlike anything they'd ever faced, towering humanoid in form, but composed of swirling dark energy. His presence radiated malice. The very ground seemed to tremble beneath him as he stepped forward, eyes glowing with cosmic power. "You think you can stand against me, Exaroth?" Voice boomed, echoing through the broken landscape. "I have destroyed worlds. I have bent the very fabric of the universe to my will, and you two insignificant mortals dare to challenge me." Tony's HUD lit up with warnings as Exaroth's energy levels surged. "You ready for this?" Tony asked, his voice tight with focus. Clark's eyes narrowed, his muscles tensing. "Let's talk about." Exaroth wasted no time. With a swipe of his hand, a wave of dark energy shot toward them. Clark moved first, darting into the sky and countering with a burst of heat vision. The beams collided with Exaroth's energy, creating a blinding explosion. Tony followed up, launching himself into the air, his antimatter suit powering up. He fired a series of missiles, each one designed to destabilize the energy field around Exaroth. The explosions rocked the landscape, but Exaroth remained unmoved. "You are nothing," Exaroth roared, his voice a force of nature. He raised his hands, and the very sky seemed to split apart, revealing the infinite darkness of space beyond. Clark grit his teeth, his mind racing. This wasn't just a battle of strengths. Exaroth was tapping into powers far beyond the physical. He had to think to strategize, but there was no time. The cosmic energy surrounding Exaroth was overwhelming. Tony's voice crackled in Clark's earpiece. "We were not hitting him hard enough. We need to overload him, make him unstable." Clark's eyes narrowed. "Then let's do it." With a burst of speed, Clark flew straight at Exaroth, his fists glowing with energy. Exaroth turned, his eyes flashing with cosmic fire, but Clark was too fast. He slammed into Exaroth with enough force to shatter mountains, sending the alien reeling. "Now start," Clark shouted. Tony swooped in, his antimatter suit glowing brighter than ever. He targeted Exaroth's core, unleashing a focused burst of energy. The impact sent shockwaves through the air, and for a moment it seemed as though they had succeeded. But then, with a chilling laugh, Exaroth rose again, seemingly unharmed. "You cannot defeat me. I am eternal." Clark landed beside Tony, breathing heavily. "We need a new plan." Sir's face was grim. "Yeah, no kidding." The battle had just begun. Exaroth's laughter echoed across the ruins, a low rumble that sent tremors through the ground beneath their feet. Clark clenched his fists, his mind racing as he scanned the towering figure before them. Exaroth's power was beyond anything he'd ever encountered, and they were running out of time. Earth couldn't withstand much more of this. The sky above was already cracking with cosmic energy, a sign that the very atmosphere was beginning to buckle under the alien's influence. Tony's antimatter suit whirred beside him, its systems buzzing with energy as Tony adjusted the controls inside his helmet. "We've got one shot at this," Tony said, his voice crackling through the comms. "If we can destabilize him, he'll rip Earth apart." Clark's eyes flashed to the sky where the energy field Exaroth had summoned continued to widen, threatening to consume the planet. "I am not giving up yet." Tony's mouth twisted into a grim smile. "Good, because I've got plans." Clark nodded, his focus narrowing to the battle at hand. They'd been fighting independently, trying to outmuscle Exaroth, but that clearly wasn't working. Exaroth's power wasn't just brute strength, it was something else, something they didn't fully understand yet. But if anyone could figure out a way to beat him, it was Tony Stark. The air around them began to crackle as Exaroth raised his arms, summoning more cosmic energy. Dark tendrils of power twisted through the sky, lashing down toward the two heroes with unrelenting fury. Clark shot into the air, his speed unmatched, but even he could feel the pressure building around him. Exaroth's power was everywhere, pressing down on him like a weight he couldn't shake. Tony Stark's voice cut through the noise. He's pulling energy from the cosmic void. We need to cut him off from his sword. Clark dodged another blast of energy, his mind racing. How? Tony, suit, how does it power it up to its full capacity? I am going to tap into the antimatter in my suit and generate a containment field around him. It should disrupt his connection to the void long enough for you to hit him with everything you vex. Clark's eyes narrowed. That could destroy you. Tony didn't hesitate. That's the risk, but it's our best shot. For a moment, Clark hesitated. He knew Tony was right, but the thought of losing him, of watching another friend sacrifice themselves, weighed heavily on him. But there was no other choice. Exaroth was too powerful, and the fate of the planet hung in the balance. Do it. Clark set his voice firm. Tony shot upward, his suit blazing with light as he positioned himself between Exaroth and the widening cosmic rift in the sky. The antimatter suit began to glow, its energy field expanding as Tony initiated the containment protocol. Exaroth's eyes flared as he sensed the shift in the energy around him, and he turned his full attention to Tony. You think you can stop me? Stark. Exaroth's voice boomed, his hands crackling with dark energy. I am beyond your technology. Tony gritted his teeth, pushing his suit to its limits. Yeah, well, I've heard that before. With a roar, Exaroth unleashed a blast of cosmic energy directly at Tony, but the antimatter field held. The energy collided with the containment barrier, sending shockwaves through the air but not breaking through. Tony's soft hands shook as he struggled to maintain the field, his HUD flashing warnings about the suit's ice integrity. Clark now, Tony Stark's voice was strained, but he held his ground. Clark didn't waste a second. With a burst of speed, he shot toward Exaroth, his eyes glowing with heat vision as he unleashed a powerful blast at the alien's core. The beam struck Exaroth square in the chest, sending cracks of energy rippling across his body. Exaroth screamed in fury, his form flickering as the containment field cut off his connection to the cosmic void. For the first time, Clark saw something in Exaroth's eyes that hadn't been there before. Fear. Clark pressed the advantage, pushing harder with his heat vision, pouring every ounce of strength he had into the attack. Exaroth's body began to destabilize, the dark energy that surrounded him flickering and fading. The ground beneath them shook as the cosmic rift in the sky started to close, the energy collapsing in on itself. But Exaroth wasn't done yet. With a final surge of power, he lashed out at Clark, striking him with a wave of energy that sent him crashing to the ground. Clark gasped as the impact knocked the wind out of him, but he pushed himself to his feet, his eyes locked on Exaroth. Tony Stark's voice came through the comms, weak but determined. With that, him on the ropes. One more hit, and he's done. Clark nodded, his muscles tensing as he prepared for the final strike. He could feel the strain in his body, the exhaustion from the battle weighing on him, but he couldn't stop. Now, not when they were so close. With a roar, Clark launched himself into the air, his fists glowing with energy as he flew toward Exaroth. The alien's eyes widened in realization as Clark slammed into him with everything he had. The impact sent shockwaves through the air and Exaroth's body shattered, the dark energy that had once surrounded him, dissolving into nothingness. For a moment, everything was silent. The sky, once filled with crackling energy, was calm again. The ground beneath them stopped trembling. Exaroth was gone. Clark landed beside Tony, who had collapsed to one knee, his suit sparking with damage. Clark knelt beside him, resting a hand on his shoulder. You did it. Tony let out a shaky breath, his face pale but alive with relief. We did it. They both sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the battle settling over them. The destruction around them was immense, but Earth was still standing. They had won. But it wasn't just the victory that lingered in Clark's mind. It was the way they had fought together, despite their differences. They had always been at odds, Tony's reliance on technology, his willingness to take risks, clashing with Clark's unwavering moral compass. But in the end, they had found a way to work together, to combine their strengths in a way that neither of them could have done alone. Clark stood, offering a hand to Tony. You're a good man, Stark. Tony looked up at him, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Don't go getting sentimental on me, Ken. Clark chuckled, pulling him to his feet. I want to, but you should know, you did more than just save the planet today. Tony raised an eyebrow. Yeah, and what's of that? Clark looked out at the horizon, where the first rays of sunlight were beginning to break through the cloud. You proved that sometimes, even when everything seems hopeless, we can still find a way together. Tony didn't respond for a moment, his gaze following Clark's, sent toward the rising sun. Maybe you reread, right? He said quietly, but don't you get used to me agreeing with you. Clark smiled, wouldn't dream of it. They stood there for a while longer, watching as the light slowly returned to the sky, the weight of the battle fading but the memory of it etched into their mind. Together, they had faced the impossible and come out the other side stronger for it. And as they turned to leave, ready to face whatever challenges the future might hold, they knew that no matter what came next, they would stand together,